sound that is too cold for me.
Hear that?
Hear that?
That's right.
I don't want no ice cream sound that is too soft. You see,
Lord of mercy.
I want a sound that give me back each and every night time. Stone love.
That's the name of the song.
I want the sound that give me vibes even in the daytime. You know.
So all the people ever come from east, west, north, and south. Ready and born in your Rasta. You hear me now? Shabba!
Come on the jig, how we know we legit. Stone love is a song that can let me them. Come on the jig, how we know we legit. Stone love is a song that don't
That's right.
Hey, they want from the turntable gala. Turn on face. Sound boy taste.
I just ride on my son.
You wind up in a mess.
Hold on to the gunfire there.
You can't suspect when them know.
We have to find a ball.
We are more the jig, how we know we legit.
How easy man like Jesus, you don't know.
I don't want no thin fat sound to contest Papa Stone Love. Don't want a thin fat sound, that's the speaker sound. We start with the
Japanese are spread out right now.
Stone Love, it's the nicest, it's the sweetest sound. Daddy, Stone Love, the nicest, it's the sweetest sound.
Give me some more. Children in England, them just love Stone Love.
Alright, it's Fed Art TV. I'm in here with Khepra Anu, author of the book Paradise Health, a feasting and fasting guide to optimal health through detoxification. It's available on Amazon for $16. And I gotta say, man, this guy right here with the raw foods is no one better in the city. And in fact, it might not be anyone better in the world. So look. First, I gotta thank you, Khepra, because I botched the first interview. So we're back in here. You were gracious enough to let me back in and do it all over again. So first, I want to thank you and introduce. This is Khepra Anu right here. So tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you got into raw foods.
Yeah, well, so I'm originally from a small town in upstate New York, Monticello, New York. You know, my great-grandmother laid, I guess, my family roots there back in, I guess, almost 100 years ago now. And her and my grandmother, you know, they were religious, very spiritual. And basically what they started was really, you know, for my great-grandmother, she started a church which became a foundation for really the black community in Monticello. My uncle was the first black born, my oldest uncle was the first black born in Monticello, New York, and a lot of other, you know, blacks from the South, Louisiana, Alabama. Came there, and I grew up there. I had a great childhood, a lot of love, and I'm going into that because, you know, obviously, like I said, my family was very religious, and though I did not, there was something that I just did not buy in terms of what was being taught to me or what was being, you know, said to me week in and week out going to church. And but yet there were values and there was a lot of light instilled in me, you know, through my family. Some years later, and it's connected to raw food, when I finally went off to college and got a chance to hear the legendary ancestor Dick Gregory speak, and he opened up his Bible in Genesis 1:29 and said, let man have fruit and herb be his meat. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that forever changed me. For probably the 18, 19 years that I've had to go to church every week and hear different interpretations of, what was said in the Bible, week in, week out, year in, year out, never once. Let man just eat fruit and herbs. And it just when you hear truth, there's a certain, truth has a certain vibration. And one of the things is if you're, when you start to tune your vibration, you'll start to know truth without any proof. And like I said, that day forever changed me. I knew that this would be my life. And I think I was 18, 19 years old at the time. That's what really laid the foundation and laid the seed for my raw food. Starting with, again, my family, where I was from, my upbringing, and then later on hearing, just being introduced to that scripture, and and it was already on the road of vegan vegetarianism, but it was like, wow, this is taking it to the ultimate highest level. So that's what started my journey.
I'm a dope boy's nightmare, young, clean, and just don't need a hit. No cocaine or no needle fix. Breaking the cycle, gotta be your own leadership. So I just say no.
What is the importance of raw food in comparison to the American diet? I mean, just the regular or standard American diet, which is the SAD diet. Mm-hmm. What would you say the importance of raw food is? And in comparison to the classical vegan diet.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think most of us, start out with standard American diet. We're eating basically, on one level, let me say it like this. On one level, it's really not that much different. Everything we crave, from sweet to salt to fat, carbs, protein, and obviously nutrients like vitamins, minerals. Well, that's when you start to talk about nutrients and density, that's where you start to divide. As human beings, we pretty much crave pretty much the same thing. Like I mentioned sweet, or sugars, salts, carbs, fats, proteins. I'll answer both in one, because even with the vegan diet versus the raw food diet, the difference is, and I always tell people, we need sweets, we need salt, and we definitely need fat. No one argues and no one debates or questions protein. So we need all those things. The principal difference of the raw food diet with any other diet is the form. When we're getting it in a raw food form, we're getting it, Mother Nature is our chef. And when we allow Mother Nature to be in that process, and we don't take it beyond by either destroying, chemically altering, or taking something that's not ideal for eating. And that's where the raw food diet really differs from both. Like, for example, wheat. We can't eat wheat in its natural form. We can't eat most forms of rice in its natural form. We can't eat most forms of beans in its natural form. I mean, I can keep going. We can't eat most forms of animal flesh in its natural form. So this is where cooking comes into play, because cooking now, for a lot of those things, or even most, or if not all of those things, cooking is what I call a forced ripening process. See, what Mother Nature does is when she cooks something, that's when it becomes ripe. The ripening process is the cooking process. So, just like with a fruit, we know a fruit should be ripe and it will taste optimal. Like the flavor, the sweetness, the texture, all of it's, we know it's ripe. When, let's say we have a bean and it's hard, and even if we soak it, it's still hard to digest. It's still hard to chew and break down. So what we have to do is actually take it a step further and apply heat. So we're using heat to force the water into the fiber or the tissue of the bean, the rice, or whatever kind of starch it may be, so we can then chew it and digest it and get some value out of it. Because these, at least in that example of these starches, because it is a high starch, what happens is we chew it and we try to eat it. It's not, there's no real excitement, there's no real taste or flavor to a bean by itself, to a rice by itself. Normally what happens, or what has to happen with a starch, whether it's potato, let's say even a yam, and like a rice or bean, is that we have to add a fat to it. Okay, we have to add some sauce, a gravy. We have to add some flavor. Okay? So, so again, we're altering, and normally that is also done within the cooking process or the ripening process. So that's where really the difference with raw food, because we really don't have to do any of that. Most of the food, especially if we're dealing with fruits, are coming already well done. Even a lot of vegetables. Not only do they have the right amount of water, they have the right amount of sugar, they have the right amount of salt, and if they have fat, they have the right amount of fat. And I feel like the raw food chef is the chef that nature truly honors and respects, because that is the only chef that is truly honoring and respecting nature. Okay, no other chef is taking or having the reverence for nature and for the growing process, because that's what also raw food represents, is basically being connected to a food that not only is grown in nature, but is grown with a rhythm with nature, grown with the seasons, grown with the earth and the rain and the wind, all in divine timing. Okay? So you eating that food, you start to connect with that rhythm. You start to connect with that synchronicity. Okay? With cooked food, whether it be vegan or whether it be everything, there's no connection with that. You're eating highly processed food, whether it's genetic or organic. You're eating food, again, that is not, because it has to be manufactured, because it has to be altered, and it has to be put through some kind of manufacturing process. It's not fit to be eaten. We want to eat food that represents food that we would see in our garden. Okay, so when we can recognize, okay, yeah, that would come from that, and this would come from this, and versus like a pancake, for example, we can't recognize that. And if we look at the ingredients, because sometimes even with raw food, we can take it and we can process it in a way where it can look very different. However, with a lot of the selections that we find in cooked vegan and standard American diet, it's hard to discern the source. But we know the source because, well, we can limit it to a certain select foods that are highly grown and highly processed, highly modified in our larger agricultural business and complex. That whole business complex is pretty much limited to a few certain foods that are in pretty much everything that is processed. So
Mystic Man.
Okay, I'm coming in. I'm getting into the raw vegan thing, and I find out that hey, it might be more fat in a cashew pie than I would get if I eat these cooked foods. Is there a difference in that fat, and how does that translate?
Well, really that goes back to my last response, because I mentioned sugar, I mentioned salt, and I mentioned fat. And I could mention other aspects of food, but typically those three will get a bad rap. And we need all those three. The form is everything. The form is everything. So when we're getting raw plant sugar, fat, salt, again, we're getting food. We're getting elements of food that we need. We especially need fat.
So I guess what I'm saying is there a difference in the fat from that cashew and inside of that the formula? Because that cashew is raw, is that fat better for me than say maybe raw from a greasy sandwich?
Absolutely, because I mean, you could say this about really any aspect of food, but especially fat. When you heat fat, it becomes very dangerous. And fat is one of those foods, or I should say oil. Oil is one of those foods. It will either heal you and raise your level of vibration to the highest it can be, or it can take you out. And the difference is if it's cooked or if it's raw.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really no in between. It's either going to heal you and have your health at a high level, or it's going to destroy you. And we see that with our most common ailments. The number one killer is, I believe, heart disease. And again, the foods that we're eating, because we're seeing a lot of people, especially elders, they go to a no-fat diet and they get better. They've eaten so much bad fats over their lifetime, they can't even almost get away with eating avocado or eating nuts and seeds. Even though those fats, they almost have to eliminate. They've almost exhausted their liver and their ability to process fatty foods. We need fat foods. So basically, again, the form is everything, especially with fat. Especially.
Now, talk to me a little bit about broccoli and cauliflower. You sometimes, I know you've heard this about, well, broccoli and cauliflower, those aren't real. Those aren't real vegetables. So talk to me about that a little bit and why it's okay to consume them and how they help us.
Well, broccoli, cauliflower are flowers. Yes, you could consider them part of the vegetable kingdom. You probably will not see them growing in nature, which is where people will have issue or problem with those foods. While they're not the highest nutritional value foods, can you eat broccoli? Can you eat cauliflower and get benefit from it? Sure. Is it a wild indigenous food? No. It is a hybrid vegetable. Hybrids. The thing about hybrid foods is probably about 100% of the food we eat is hybrid. So the thing is while there are some foods that are probably less hybrid than others, they are all hybrids. I can't think of one food that is in common circulation, whether it be at a farmer's market, a health food store, or a standard grocery store, in the produce section, that is not a hybrid.
So what you're saying to me is, the avocado that I use,
the avocado is definitely a hybrid.
It's not the original avocado.
It's not the original avocado.
Okay, so the original avocado, how does that look? Is that?
I've seen pictures. It's definitely not as creamy or buttery looking. Mm-hmm. Look, over my lifetime, and especially since I got into this lifestyle, I received some of my information from books, just like everybody else, from information that I may research online, or from teachers that I have. But then there's another source that I highly rely on, and that's what I call the divine download. I really trust, when information really just comes to me through the divine, as I like to call it. And one of the things, like when I think about hybrid foods, is one thing we know is hybrids can occur naturally on their own. But hybrids also can occur when man gets in the picture, which is where probably most of the hybrids that we eat have happened. Where man is taking this and crossing it with this. And now, if this was truly unnatural, how is it that it can happen in nature? You see what I'm saying? It's almost like a lot of these hybrids. Now, when a hybrid is not able to reproduce itself or produce a seed, where that seed can then be taken, I feel like while it may be less than its wild indigenous cousin or elder, it still has value. And just looking at how we can find a compromise, how we can find a balance, you know, because even going back to broccoli and cauliflower, now, me personally, will I eat broccoli and cauliflower? Yeah, I'll eat it. It will definitely be raw. Will I eat a lot of it? Will I eat it every day? No. Does it have benefit? It has nutrients. It has vitamin C. It has things that are healing. Okay? But is it an optimal wild indigenous food? No. But there is no wild indigenous food that we eat. Now, there are certain wild foods like seaweeds and sea moss and sea vegetables, because a lot of the sea vegetables, which is why we should eat some sea vegetable or sea vegetation every day, I would say, because a lot, if not all of the sea vegetables have not been manipulated by man. So, you know, if we're eating a good portion, and I say a good portion, not even 50%, but just some, even if it's 10, 20, 30% of the food that you're eating is of a wild nature, meaning like there's been very little cultivation as far as from now most of our fruit, actually all of our fruits, even the seeded watermelon. Seeded watermelon is a hybrid.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. You know, people talking about that. Now, is the seeded watermelon better than the seedless watermelon? Of course. So, you know, the thing is yes, there are levels to it, and I mean, you know, ultimately we got to do the best we can and eat the best foods possible. And with that being said, we just have to, you know, just continue to learn, continue to do our research, continue to source the best high quality fruits and vegetables that you can eat, and find a balance and a rhythm with that. If you're eating seasonally, I say the first place that you go is your local farmers markets. That's probably the highest vibrational food other than you growing it, your food yourself. Okay, and then the next place is probably your organic market. If you go to your organic market, while maybe some of the food there may be local, a lot of it, because it's certified organic, and I don't put a whole lot on that label, simply because a lot of those foods are not local. You know, they may come from far, even another country. But it typically will be better than a lot of the food that you'll find in your common market. And then, you know, one of the other really great places to go is your international market.
A quick question. So organics, when we start to get into organic, what is the importance of organic, having your stuff be organic compared to genetic? You know, what's the importance of that? Or you said you don't put a lot of weight into that, or?
Well, I don't put a lot of weight into it because one of the things that I look for is what I call the integrity of a food, especially a fruit. Now, what do I mean by that? If I go to a market, and whether, like, a good example would be like apples or oranges, okay? And I've seen oranges where just like watermelon. Watermelon is a great example because when you find seeded watermelons, like when you see the guy driving that come from, you know, the country, and you got the truck full of watermelons, you cannot find two watermelons that are the same. You'll find them all different shapes, different sizes, different weights. To me, that's how food should be represented, especially fruits and vegetables. When you see, again, different sizes, different to me that's integrity. When I see oranges, organic oranges, and they're all the same color, they're all the same shape, they're all the same size, and there's not a blemish on them, I don't trust that. You know, and again, that's supposed to be organic. And then you probably cut it open. He ain't got no seeds either. Okay, so again, I don't put a whole lot of weight on organic. I look for the integrity just from looking at, now, going back to the oranges example. And orange is also hybrid. But you know, there are oranges where, you know, the skin got a whole bunch of marks. It's a lot of brown lines, and you know, mixed with orange, and they're not necessarily as, I guess, visually appealing as those perfectly orange organic oranges that you find in your organic market. But the flavor and the taste, there's no comparison. Those ugly oranges I take every day, all day, and they're not organic, but they taste better than organic. Okay, so I don't put a whole lot of stock. I mean, you know, the other thing is you know, we just gotta go back to nature. You know, in terms of because, you know, as now there is a place for, you know, having, you know, these organizations and agencies involved that's going to set these criteria to even label it organic. Because that's all that's what we come in. That's you know that's what the organic is about now.
Food and Drug Administration.
Well, it's the USDA.
USDA food.
Yeah,
USDA.
yeah, it's the USDA that certifies that does the organic certification.
Right.
Again, it's just going back to nature, because I'll find, like I said, when I go to a farmer's market, I'm gonna find that nutritional integrity. I'm gonna find, like when I go get tomatoes. Again, the tomatoes are gonna be all different sizes, shapes, just amazing flavor. Just you know, and so that's why I don't. And again, most of your organic is going to come, if you're in the U.S., it's going to come from California, Mexico, or some other country. no matter where you are in the U.S. So, you know, getting local is always going to be best.
Fresh fruit in my blender, pinch of ginger, great blood cleanser. It's the art of good nutrition. No graveyard inside the kitchen. Low salt, no hypertension. No junk food goes in my engine. Strictly fruits and veggies, beans and seasoned nuts.
Soy. Now, a lot of people, you know, the vegan thing is in now. You know, everybody's transitioning, they're turning vegan. And what I notice, and I know you've noticed, is that a lot of people, they don't want the hamburger anymore, but they want the burger that looks like a hamburger, the burger that looks like or tastes like a chicken sandwich. And a lot of times those burgers and sandwiches have soy in it. So what would your advice be about soy and the dangers of soy?
Yeah, well, there it is. I mean, soy is dangerous, period. It is not a food, in my view. Traditionally, certain cultures understood that this was not only a food that was very difficult to digest, and because it was difficult to digest, certain methods had to be taken in order to allow it to be digested. Those methods were basically fermentation. And, you know, fermentation is a process, unlike cooking, it's almost like the opposite of cooking, because where I explained how cooking is really a ripening process, fermentation is a process where it will allow it to culture and create its own digestive enzymes so that now you can chew it and properly digest it. See, you know, when food is cooked, basically when, you know, when I say cooked, it meaning like it's either cooked with water or oil with heat to allow that water or oil or both to penetrate so that we can chew it and digest it. Where with fermentation, it's basically an environment is set so that it can create the enzymes, its own enzymes. See, when we eat fruits and vegetables, they have their own enzymes, and that's another big reason why we want to eat raw foods, is because enzymes are just about everything in terms of the processes that happen in the body. And if we eat fermented foods, those foods have their own or contain enzymes at a high level. So soy had to be treated in this way. Now, the soy of today is a far stretch from the soy of yesterday. Not only has it been overly cultivated, it's definitely been modified genetically. I mean, the whole industry started as with an effort to feed cattle. When cattle was fed coconut and palm fat back in the 50s, I believe, this was costly. Also because when the transition was made, feeding them soy, because of the high level of estrogen in the soy, it allowed the cows to become fatter. Now, with them being fed the soy or the soy oil, the byproduct from the soybean, from the soy oil, was the soy curd or the soy paste, which again was a byproduct, which was really had really no use. But again, with being, these companies being in business, said, well, we can treat this as a health food, and that's where we found tofu, things like tofu and other soy derivatives come out of this. So a highly processed food has no nutritional value. It blocks mineral absorption.
Wow. And a lot of us talk about vitamin D, so that would be big.
Yeah, well, it will actually, the thing is, it does a lot of harm. A lot of harm. Like, it could even be fatal for both male and female, because it's going to cause hormonal issues. High levels of estrogen. It's blocking minerals. I've seen it do damage to, like, firsthand with my own eyes. And then doing the research to see that what this food is capable of doing. Again, very, very dangerous. I say you have a better chance you can be healthier eating certain animal products versus soy.
Wow. That's a huge statement. Okay.
Yes. So again, I see it as almost as like equivalent to like eating. I mean, we wouldn't eat just because it's, because you can hear the argument. Well, it's plant based. There are a lot of things that grow in the plant world that we don't eat, like cotton. Okay. And soy, I see as something that we could use commercially for like plastics. And that's what I see it as. I see it as a form of plastic.
Wow.
And if you eat it, you're basically eating plastic. So again, a very dangerous food. There's a lot of information, but basically, it's high in phytic acid, which again doesn't allow for us to absorb certain minerals. So it can actually, contribute to leaching minerals in the body, specifically calcium. High levels of estrogen. Again, when the cows were fed coconut and palm, they were energetic, they were lean, they were healthier. When they were fed soy, they fattened them up. So that's what will happen to us if we eat a lot of soy. It will fatten us up.
Now I got to take you back to this because I'm listening to you. So you said you saw it do damage. Mm-hmm. What kind of damage did you see it do?
Well, I'll share, a very near and dear experience. My third child. Well, let me go back, because even my first child. Now, my wife was, a vegan, and with my first child, a girl, basically what I saw from her was from her teeth. Her teeth didn't come in as white. They were almost like you could almost see through them. And they chipped, like they were almost like they just weren't strong. And so a lot of dental issues with my first child. With my third child, this was a boy. And with my third child, my then partner at the time, because that was the second. This was my third child, but my second child with my then partner at the time. With our first child, she ate primarily fish as her protein. And, I guess with my influence, but not being raw, And again, I didn't really have the knowledge or the experience. I didn't eat soy, but that was something. She was craving protein, and she was eating a lot of tofu. And pretty much every day during that pregnancy. And when he came out, he looked fine. His energy seemed off. He didn't have like the vibrancy of my two daughters previous. And I didn't think I just said, okay, this is interesting, but I guess we'll see. And at probably month number 2, eczema over his whole body. And I said, okay, what was different? And immediately, again, my divine intuition told me it was the soy. And I started to do research. And just saw how damaging. There's a book called The Whole Soy Story. And the woman who wrote this book really has done her research, and I feel like if he happened to be a girl, maybe the result wouldn't have been so dramatic with the eczema. But what eczema is basically is, they call it a leaky gut. But basically, the gut is not able to process foods, essentially. At least to enough of a level where the skin can repair itself. Because that's essentially, it's almost like, with the eczema, especially on a baby, the skin is open. And obviously, there's a lot of discomfort, a lot of pain. So much so. So, my then partner at the time had to obviously change her diet completely. And, but because he was compromised from the womb, I'm not sure if he would have had he would have had the best life. Now, he passed at 6 months.
Oh man, sorry to hear that.
So again, when I say it was close and personal, it was close and personal. Yeah. And
I appreciate
there's no
sharing
question.
that too. I appreciate.
Yeah, there was no question. Like again, I've seen this thing literally do damage, and again, I feel blessed and fortunate because I almost feel like, had he lived, again, I don't know if it would have been a life worth living, given the fact that he was compromised since he was yay big. Okay, so, but the lesson was major. The lesson was major. And I just caution, especially vegan parents, a lot of us will turn vegan for health reasons. And if you're, because I've seen this happen with a lot of vegan parents, where the children, especially the woman is eating meat. When a woman is eating meat and she has a child, and the child grows up to be healthy, at least in the beginning stages, and then turns vegan, and then this child has eczema. It's like, why is that? Isn't it supposed to be a healthier form of diet? The only way to really eat vegan healthy is raw.
Okay.
And we see that with procreation. I've seen it so many times where, vegan parents are having children and they're coming down with eczema. And it becomes very, very tricky, because the thing is when a woman is pregnant, the rules are different. the amount of nutrients that she needs is on a different scale. And sometimes that nutrition or that nutritional density you can't get from a plant. Now, does that mean that the having a plant-based diet is not ideal? Absolutely not. I feel that it goes on a generational level. I mean, a lot of us are first generation vegan vegetarian. We got to think, our ancestor, our great, I mean, what we are we have been derived from obviously generations, timeless. But look at the diet of those generations. Okay? And if we are looking to change, we have to do it in a way where we're thinking not just about ourselves, but thinking multi-generational. Okay? And so and the thing is about, as far as animal protein, fat, nutrition, and this is the reason why it can be difficult to give up eating animals, because bite for bite, pound for pound, animal, whatever that may be, whether it be a fish, whether it be a chicken or a cow, whatever it may be, pound for pound, that animal is going to have a lot more nutrition per bite. Does that mean that it is ideal? See, that's a different question. See, so the thing is like, again, we gotta really be, we really have to understand, if we're changing our diet. Now, I definitely feel like, again, the raw vegan diet is the optimal. It is the king of all diets. However, again, like I said, with young women, or young people, especially young adults, looking to procreate, there has to be a greater understanding. And especially if there's cravings of, I've heard women say they've craved a Whopper from Burger King. And what I would tell them is, if you're craving a Whopper from Burger King, then you need to eat a Whopper from Burger King while you're pregnant. Again, because there's a memory. Our body remembers everything it has ever eaten. And sometimes the body can only access certain nutrients like iron and it doesn't know how to get iron from kale. Doesn't know how to get iron from hemp seed. Okay, even though iron is in those things, it won't know it to the level where that person has to produce another life. So you may have to go to the Whopper from Burger King. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
So it's not like you have to eat the Whopper from Burger King for the rest of your life. Okay, but for the sacrifice you need to make for that child to be healthy.
Right.
Okay, you do that, and you probably won't have to do it every day, but you just do it so that child can get what it needs, because that child is just trying to get what it needs.
Right.
And with women, especially going to the soy, again, that's a recipe potentially for disaster, as I very well know.
come. Wait till they find.
Palava, he dey find.
Palava, he go get you.